All right, again from round one of the Gibraltar Chess Festival. This features a high-rated player versus a lower-rated player, again, as we often will have in the first rounds of these type of tournaments. This time with the white pieces is GM Fabiano Caruana, and with the black pieces is a player who's a FIDE master with the last name of Rakesh. Game started out c4, c6. And obviously, this player likes to play Caruana or Slav complexes. So we see c6. Of course, player has to be prepared for a move like e4, where often white is willing to take on an isolated pawn here. You have these type of games, type of positions. Knight of 3, and so on and so forth. d4. So Caruana sticks to the script. Knight of 3, knight of 6. Caruana plays knight c3. Rakesh plays with d5, and now after e3, a6, d4. Now we have type of a6 Slav defense here, where white will sometimes either play c takes d5 or cramp black with c5. It's a complicated system, rather. g6, bishop d3, bishop g7, castle, castle, queen c2, excuse me, and there's b5. So basically, white is being confronted as to what he's going to do with that c pawn. Are you going to exchange? Are you going to play b3 and support it, or are you going to move it? Caruana plays b3, again maintaining the tension on the board, and later on he can decide perhaps what he wants to do with it. It's really not in black's best interest to start exchanging anyway, so white can afford to maintain the tension, because if black starts exchanging, he'll just be left with a bunch of weaknesses on the queen side. Bishop b7, bishop b2, knight b d7, rook d1. Again, notice the opposition. I'm always talking about that, because eventually this d file might swing open. You have the king here, because you figure eventually maybe a move like c5 will get played, or perhaps black will play for e5, and then the rook being on d1 may come in handy. But sometimes it could be wrong with predicting which files are going to be open and such. But opposing the opponent's heavy pieces and putting your pieces on files that are most likely to be open is usually a pretty good policy to follow. So rook c8, and again, rook c8 is interesting because again, it's not guaranteed that the c file will become open, because after all, white can just play a move like c4, but c5. But with the position being closed, the time element is not really as important, and black can just move the rook somewhere else. Time is not as critical as it is in the open games. There it is, c5. So Caruana saying, haha, you misplaced your rook. Now your rook's on a bad file, or whatever. Rook e8, a3, queen c7, good diagonal here. And knight e2, and now we see some maneuvering here to the king side. a5, and now we're already in a critical moment here. a3 is played. And now Rakesh decides to reposition his rook on a8. And now here's an interesting psychological moment here. Caruana plays b4. And now since white has just put his rook, excuse me, black has just put his rook back on a8. It's only natural, right, and intuitive that he would want to make sure that this file, gets opened, right? Or, at some point. So for instance, a takes b4 is possible. A takes b4, followed by moves like e6. And you can add this idea of, perhaps trading off the rooks. Let's say bishop c3, rook takes, and then rook a8. And black has to be careful of stuff like that, because then he's either going to give black a pass pawn that he has to deal with, or white's going to gain a pass pawn that black has to deal with after rook takes, pawn takes, as his bishop is backing this up, or he's going to give up control over the a file. So instead of taking this rook, he definitely play a move like queen d8 and just contest the file. But this could be a difficult position for black in a long one. That's what you don't want. But what I felt was interesting is that although Rakesh had repositioned his rook to a8, when Caruana played b4, I was thinking about this move a4, which seems counterintuitive, because after all, why would you put your rook on a8, then close up the position? And then try to play, for instance, moves like e6 or something. Again, bishop c3, e6, and you have a long maneuvering game here. Ideally, black would like to play for e5, but tactically it's not possible right now. He has too many pieces on it. So let's say after a4 was played, again, let's say bishop c3, you see right now it doesn't work, because after d takes e5, knight takes, move like queen b2. Let's say if he tried to do something like that, to guard it, then knight f4. So tactically it's not feasible, although that's a move that he would love to play. But I think a4 is definitely an interesting alternative there. It definitely will be a long maneuvering game, with black trying to center on this break somehow, and white is trying to engineer this break. But there will be a whole lot of maneuvering and structuring of the board here, because these rooks would have to be moved. The bishops would have to be moved, and for black and white. So it will lead to a very interesting game with the position becoming closed. Rakesh decided that, hey, I put my rooks here for a reason, and I'm gonna keep this open. At this point, Caruana pounced on this opportunity in this situation right here. Notice that the piece of rook a7 is left unprotected here. So watch, a4. So now we see the first threat is the pawn being threatened. So b takes a4, rook takes a4, and now notice this can't be captured because of that one simple move of, that one moment of the rook being unprotected. This gives white the time he needs to take over the a file. So rook a e8, and he just double up. He still can't take. And now extra protection is added, so now he's threatening to take. But now b5, right, crashes through the white queen side here. C takes b5, bishop takes b5. And now white has a powerful pass pawn. This thing is already at the 5th rank. It's protected, and it already shows that black is in a lot of trouble. So I question the idea that black had um, earlier with the allowing the queen side to be open. He did have the opportunity to just close it down. Okay, so knight b8 is played. Knight e5. You know, black of course is trying to set up blockade situations. Now that that knight is moved, this knight goes further up the board. Knight fd7. Again, trying to alleviate by trades. So knight d3. Knight b6. Rook for a3. All right. Bishop a6. Bishop takes a6. Rook takes c6. Excuse me, a6. Knight c3. Of course, now this guy's legitimately threatened. Notice there was a before it could not happen because of this situation. Again, is opposition at work again. Can't take because the queen on c2. So now Caruana cashes in. Now it's a threat. And what's interesting and good about it is that C takes b6 is a threat, but also knight takes d5 because once the knight is driven away, then who's protecting this pawn on d5? So the knight comes in, and there's another little mini lesson here is black tries to create tactics. Again, he's threatening his rook. And usually, I swear that if you try to initiate tactics from an inferior position, it always backfires. You know, chess has some funny things, you know, laws like that. Like if you playing chess long enough or you look at enough games, you'll see like these principles come up over and over again. Like if you're legit, and I'm talking about legitimately better in the position, not you just think you're better, you know, and that's of course that has a lot to do with it. Is how you assess the position. But as you get more and more experience, your assessment will become more clear and be correct. But as you see more and more chess games, and if you're legitimately better in the position, and then your opponent, you know, tries like some kind of gimmicky tactic, you know, usually there's a refutation there. And this is one of those positions. So knight c4 attacking the rook. Knight takes d5. Now everything's forced because the knight on c4 is just hanging. Knight takes a3. Bishop takes a3. Right? And black is feeling good. He's like, hey, I preserved my queen. Knight b6. Rook 8 a7. Rook to b1. Takes. Rook takes d7. And queen c4 attacking the rook. And black has given up, excuse me, white has given up the exchange, but he has this beautiful pawn structure. And this only Caruana could play a game like this. I love this pawn chain. Beautifully connected and spearheaded by this passed pawn on c5. You know, it's one wonderful positional player, Fabiano Caruana is. So he attacks the rook on a6. Queen c8, protecting. d5. And this pawn duo is getting stronger and stronger as it goes up the board. Passive move by black, rook a8, c6, rook c7, rook to b5, queen to a6. Nice move by Caruana. Again, see, opposition is something. This time it backfires against black. So he creates the opposition, right? But now Caruana just plays rook b8 check. Of course not rook b8 because the queen on a6 would be hanging. So bishop f8 is played instead. And now it's all she wrote because it's the weakness on the back rank here. watch what happens. Queen takes a6, rook takes a6 is forced. So now this rook has complete dominance of the back rank. Bishop takes e7, very strong because now this is threatened, and the only thing that can save capture of the bishop on f8 is for this rook to leave its post defending c7. And so watch what happens. This allows the pawns to march forward. So now that's attacked. And of course, he has to just give up the rook. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If he tries, for instance, to preserve his rook, rook e a7, and you just play that, and you're gonna queen. So Rakesh puts his rooks together on a7 to e7. Caruana cashes in. Again, this bishop cannot capture. This rook has to capture. And now we are left with a simple pass pawn on the c file, and the up material also, up an extra pawn. So now the exchange has been returned and everything, and white has come out on top here. But how to finish? So we want to keep pushing this pawn up. Right now it can't be pushed because of the rook guarding on the 7th rank. So we simply have to bring this knight into the game, and that's what Caruana does. He plays knight c5. Okay. And the idea behind knight c5 is really simple. It's to exploit the fact that this bishop on f8 is tied to f8 because of the king behind it. So this bishop cannot move. So it's basically a case of pin him and win him. The rook on b8 does the pinning, and the knight coming to d7 will do the winning. So what can black do about this? Nothing. So he simply resigns. For instance, if he tried rook c7, then knight d7 would come. And then all he can do is either play rook takes d7, which would allow pawn takes d7 and then the queen, or just stop the queen before it becomes a queen. But then after rook takes f8, king g7, rook a8, then black is just up a piece. Excuse me, white is just up a piece. And of course, this is an easy conversion for anyone over 1500, let alone a grandmaster of Caruana's strength and abilities. So that is it for today, and for my analysis of round 1 of the Gibraltar chess tournament. So as usual, please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy the videos, and comment and like. And I'll see you on the next one.